Welcome to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We are in the first day of pool play at the USA Ultimate College Championships. I'm Emmy Fitzgerald, joined by Kurt Gibson, and we have a match coming up, Western Washington versus Carleton College. And Western Washington just played Texas Melee in the round right before this and lost 15 to 10. Whereas from the 7th seed Melee, Texas squad to the 14th seed Western Washington, Carleton had a bye the first game of the day. So what kind of advantage do you really see that fresh legs can bring, Kurt?
Well, I know one of the toughest things to do, especially at a tournament like this, is to play that first game of the day. You usually are very, very excited. You're thrilled to obviously be out here, so you don't exactly sleep the best the night before. But, generally, when I think about some of my time back in playing college is, the goal was to not have to play a pre-quarter matchup because they would play the game before you earlier in the day and then have one more game underneath their belt. And in general, there are exceptions, but in general, you are hoping for that team to play a game before you because usually it's a tougher game, and then it's just that one more game that they have to play to run and play, and just keeps you that much more fresh. These games aren't easy, especially in a heat like this. It is quite hot out here.
It is warm. The temperature is in the 80s here in Milwaukee, and the team is playing on a turf field. So usually the heat emanating from the turf adds about 5 to 10 degrees as well.
Yeah, you hear sometimes people complain about playing on turf, whether it's hard on their knees. I happen to not mind it at all. It's a fast surface, it is, I would say, a benefit to the offense. But, in general, yeah, it can be a little bit hotter. But especially for this part of the country, I think you'll take this any day over 40 degrees and windy and rainy, which it's been for quite a few weekends, considering I reside not too far down the road in Chicago. This is a beautiful, beautiful day for Ultimate.
And both teams did have to travel to get here. Carleton College not having to go as far, being from Minnesota. This is their 5th college championship in the past 6 seasons. Whereas Western Washington, this is their 3rd time to qualify for nationals. Last year, they weren't able to attend because they were suspended by the university. So this certainly an exciting time for them to be back here versus such a storied program like Syzygy, Carleton Ultimate.
Yeah, Carleton Carleton is one of those programs where everybody knows, right? Whether it's the women or the men, they have historically been a powerhouse in Ultimate. I would say more so the men's side, but the women are, obviously programs draw both women and men to the school, and so Carleton is a name that everybody knows in Ultimate Frisbee. So when you play Carleton and you got them on your roster, you know that you're going to be set up for a solid matchup.
So Carleton went undefeated at the Queen City Tune-Up this year, and they have 2 players who placed all region. Maddie Priest, the North Central region first team, and Naomi Price-Lazarus, 2nd team all region. So bringing that kind of poise to be recognized among a region like that should be a really interesting matchup, whereas on the Western Washington side, they have a lot of consistency across their various players. We'll look from Maddie Gilbert and Samia Ismail to really make an impact today. And Kurt, we're seeing from the Carleton, we're seeing from the Western Washington women, something we saw in the last game, bit of a trend.
Yeah, you saw the Carleton men, which is the first time I've ever seen men do it, but line up on the offensive line holding hands. And obviously we see the Carleton women doing that, Western Washington doing that as well, which is kind of ironic because we see Carleton men
Right.
doing it. You'd think the Carleton women would also maybe follow that trend, but Western Washington's doing that too.
And Western Washington, right off the bat, looking for the end zone. That was Alana Hall for this first score of the game.
Yeah, so the first place that I ever saw a team hold hands on the line was the Colombian women's team, Revolution. They're based out of Medellin, Colombia, and they've got bright pink jerseys, and they were at the U.S. Open this past year. They won it, and they're going to be competing at the World Championships in July in Cincinnati, and they got to be considered the favorite. But they've just got a great influx of young talent. And I think they're clearly, while usually you would say the American game has influenced and is influencing the rest of the world, in this case we're seeing some international influence on the game in the United States, you know, with both men's and women's team holding hands on the line. And, you know, it's a representation of unity and team unity, and so it's kind of cool to see.
And the quick huck play, too, very much in the well of Revolution also.
Yeah, they've got some great throwers on that team, and just some incredible athletes. You know, you see them on highlight reels all across the sport and on, you know, social media and whatnot, YouTube. You see it all the time. But, you know, you can see they have traveled in many places. A lot of their junior players have played in the World Junior Ultimate Championships. They've played at the World Games, and they've performed extremely well. So their influence, you know, Manuela Cardenas actually played last year for Molly Brown, which is the club team out of Denver, Colorado, and she's going to be playing with them again this year. And, you know, just really getting an influence across the United States.
So Western Washington with another quick score going up for a break. That was Macy Shelbert there for the reception, and Western Washington just not wasting any time at all. That nice outside in flick into the end zone.
Yeah, you can see they definitely look like the fresh team out here, right? 2 quick scores. They look like they're running really well. They're coming out firing on all cylinders here. And Carleton, obviously, the team that had a game beforehand.
And actually, Western Washington played before and played against Texas.
Excuse me, yes.
But maybe sometimes it does work to your advantage if your legs are already loose, too, coming out.
Yeah, usually the first game of the day, sometimes you can come out a little bit flat. You know, you haven't gotten your legs underneath you. These long tournaments, you know, it can cause you to take a little bit of a time to get, you know, adjusted to the playing conditions. I know, you know, sometimes when we've played in games, sometimes, you know, you almost feel exhausted after the first few points on the field. And then, you know, the second half, it comes to the point where you feel like you could play every point and not come off. So, you know, just kind of get that adrenaline going, and, you know, Carleton just might not have that yet.
So Yen to pull for Western Washington. Carleton on offense, coming in a side stack, looking to isolate Arevalo. And Carleton shooting towards the end zone. That's not in. Anna Stubbs will reset to Powell. Looking for the strike up line, and Carleton answering quickly.
There was a couple nice upline passes on the first half of the field that caused that long throw, that led to the long throw to go up. And then they finished with an upline cut. You know, if I'm Western Washington here, especially with this breeze coming in, you've got to prevent those upline passes, not make it so easy, because you just get that momentum. You get 5-8 extra yards off a pass instead of a net -5 or net 0 gain on a dump pass. Those are the things that can just kill you. You've got to prevent that from happening, especially in this wind. Make them throw a lot of passes. You know, make them throw, especially early on in the game. You know, make them throw a lot of passes. Maybe you can steal a few turns. And, you know, we saw in that game earlier with Carleton, you know, there was just that junk defense that they came down in against UMass, and they were able to get a few turns that way.
So Carleton is in the black jerseys and Western Washington in the white. Carleton will pull Maddie Priest with the disc. All region this year. And certainly a leader on the team.
Yeah, you can see the pulls just getting over half field. The wind definitely having an effect on the pull plays.
Tight handler defense from Carleton. Western Washington manages to reset. And that swing pass flies overhead. Third game on this field today. Each team we've seen struggle with the swing pass, but what Carleton will pick up.
That was great defense by Mackenzie Corpy on the dump there.
Bryce Lazarus over to Priest. Swinging across, gaining yards in the break side. Finds an open receiver in the end zone.
There's
Carleton
Mackenzie.
will answer with the break.
Yeah, great play by Mackenzie there. She was playing great defense against Smaya Ismail, and essentially caused that turnover there, and then essentially unlocks off of her. She could tell Smaya was running pretty slow after that turn, maybe a little bit winded, and Mackenzie was able to sneak away for that goal. That was a great play by Mackenzie.
So now we're tied at 2s in the first half of pool play here in Milwaukee. The first time that Nationals has been held in Milwaukee since 2015, so it's been a fairly short break. But we're back.
Just a short hiatus.
So be sure to leave a comment. Tell us where you're watching from, if you're cheering on a specific player. And we will do our best to try and give some shout outs. You can join the conversation too by using hashtag USAUD1Champs on Twitter and Instagram, really, where the hashtags are used the most. But thank you for tuning in on USA Ultimate social channels.
We talked about Carleton maybe taking a few points to get their legs under them. They looked great that last point. You wonder if that was, after 4 points now, this is the 5th point of the game. They've got a little bit of their legs underneath them now.
Yen will take the disc to center field, tapping in. And there's a poach in the defensive space in the fourth side. Now readjusted back. Looking to reset the mark, or reset the disc. Count, disc sails overhead. It's Riley Tower on the throw. Now Carleton with an opportunity for a break. And overthrown. So Western Washington with another chance. They'll pick up right outside the goal line. And Yen immediately finds Madison Brodall. Western Washington will hold.
It was a good pass by Yen on the goal line there. Actually, Mackenzie Corpy was guarding Yen early on the point, caused that first turnover. It looks like Carleton's, Mackenzie's going to be guarding some of the top handlers for Western Washington. You could just tell by watching her. She's got very quick feet. Take a look at next point on defense. She's like a lockdown defender there. That was pretty fun to watch. But it's a very subtle, playing good dump defense. It's not you're not going to get the big accolades for doing that, because sometimes if the Ds that you get are more team defense, right? They're more pressure. It causes the thrower to throw a poor throw or decision elsewhere, kind of like that Huck earlier. But nonetheless, it's so critical to having success in both the men's and women's game, just making sure that it's really hard for the throwers to make dump passes.
So in this first half, Western Washington has a 1-goal lead. They have 3, Carleton's 2. It's a game to 15, so half will be at 8. And there's the pull. And Ruby Cassidy Carleton going back into this isolation play. Underneath.
Oh, they broke it right through the middle there. Look, Western Washington is definitely playing a junkie type zone. You've got Ruby Cassidy sitting deep and really not near anybody, but Carleton gives it away.
So disc bounces off the hands of Anna Stubbs. Western Washington will pick up. Puck right off the bat. That's floating. Will it stay in bounds? No, it won't. Comes out this near sideline. Another opportunity for Carleton. Maya Powell will center Gracie Little. Nice fakes from Isabel Aravello.
Yeah, those are the types of things that in a junkie zone like this, you see Western running what looks to be a pretty standard 3-person cup. Carleton's just moving it really, really well. Western unable to catch up there.
That was a give and go, at least a third of the way down the field.
When you see two offenders playing the rinky-dink, throw half-yard passes that close together, you gotta catch up. You gotta be able to stop that, because otherwise, two smart offenders are just gonna do that all the way up the field until somebody gets in their way, and they weren't able to do that until the goal line.
So Carleton will tie it up. We're tied at 3s. Start the game. And we have seen wind all day. It's a little over 10 miles an hour on the field. And seems to be most noticeable in the downwind and then the cross-field swings.
Yeah, the wind's coming off from where we are here sitting in the booth, going away towards the opposite side of the field, where most of the players on the sideline are standing. And, it ends up really just being a challenging offense and defensive possessions for both teams. Usually this is where, if one of the teams has a good thrower or an exceptional thrower, you'll see a lot of them try to go every other pass to essentially, what we like to call bus driving it all the way up the field. Essentially lead the team all the way up the field, because a lot of times if you've got some, rookie or novice throwers that, aren't as experienced, it's more difficult for them to throw these throws completions in the wind. And so you want to rely on your top handlers in these types of situations, especially near your end zone, because turning it over near the end zone can be very, very costly in a game like this.
Western Washington, with several passes, did turn it over, and Carleton makes a shot into the end zone. It's kind of a 3-on-2 scenario there. Western Washington will pick back up. Yen with the disc. Ends up finding an open receiver underneath.
Yeah, you saw Claire Dettel back there. She had a chance. Her hand got on that Frisbee, and she doinked it. That's just youth right there, Experience, first game, college nationals. Hopefully we'll see her be able to make a play later in the tournament.
And Sims with a nice catch, but it was ruled out of bounds. Western Washington will pick up. Inside backhand, incomplete. Oh, but there was a call on the play. Looks like an uncontested foul. So Yen will pick back up. Underneath.
A lot of calls on this point.
So the disc will go back a third time for Yen.
Well, if you're Western Washington, Yen is one of their top throwers, so if anything, you want the disc in her hand.
Kind of looking for that strike and fill. Handler miscommunication. Here comes Carleton.
We're going to see that all day. If teams can master that throw, they're going to go extremely far in that tournament. You saw Yen, one of their top throwers for Western Washington, but she was unable to make that dump pass easy for the receiver, and we saw another turnover.
So Yen will pick up, this time needing to go all 70 yards down the field. Overshoots, intercepted. And the end zone shot is good. That's Sims with the reception. And Carleton will take the lead with 4.
Oh, we're looking at a 4-1 run here for Carleton right now. Just a little jittery from Western Washington. They came out strong, went up 2-0, and the last couple points, just a few too many turnovers and a few too, I would say, throws that just seem a little rushed. Both those last 2 turnovers were from Yen. As one of the top handlers for them, she's got to. If I'm her right now, I'm the coach. I'm saying, hey guys, we're up 2-0. We can hang with this team. Let's just relax a little bit. Hit open people and move the disc up the field.
So timeout called on the field. Probably a critical strategic timeout moment. Get everyone reset here.
Yeah, Carleton these last couple points has looked solid. They're airing it out, and they're airing it out to the right people. I mean, they did have that turnover early where they dropped it in the end zone, but I mean, those last couple throws were pretty solid. They're coming up shooting, and sometimes in a win like this, you can steal a couple points, get a lead, and you can hold on to it for the rest of the game. So I would look for Western Washington to do a little bit of that. Obviously, they want to get a couple completions under their belt, get some momentum and rhythm, but you got to take your opportunities, take your chances in this win, but we just got to be a little selective about it, right? I think some of the throws that we've seen from particularly Yen haven't been the best decisions. So look for them to come out here and be a little more deliberate in some of the throws and decisions that they're making.
So Carleton will pull part of this women's division. The first women's division was in 1987, 3 years after the first college championships in 1984.
That was quite a long time ago. 1984.
Yes.
So we're getting close to the 35th anniversary of the college championships.
Exactly. So exciting. And the 50th anniversary of Ultimate, as we've seen it progress so far to the growth, especially of women's and girls Ultimate, from the youth all the way up through college and into the adult divisions. Carleton checking back in the disc. In a red zone opportunity, there's Priest. With that continue, and Ellen Jacobus with the score.
You're actually seeing a lot of youth organizations crop up, and a lot of them have specifically gone out to try to recruit young ladies to play, and it's really cool to see. Just because I know I can say in my day when back in the mid 2000s playing college. I mean, even at regionals, there was only I think less than 8 teams there. So it's just not a lot of participation. And you come to a tournament like this, you see so many women's teams. It's great to see that. But a lot of those youth organizations have specifically gone out to recruit girls to play Ultimate, and it's just really cool to see.
And part of that is access to more footage of women playing, which just helps people learn the sport even better, which is another reason why we're so glad to bring you this live stream today and hope that you are enjoying it as much as we are.
Well, I think, you can root some of the Colombian women to some of the growth of of young ladies playing Ultimate. I mean, here, look at the ladies right now on the line. They're holding their hands. The Carleton men's team was doing the same thing. And, a lot of some of the plays that Manuela Cardenas, her twin sister Valeria Cardenas, you've got Gina Cartagena, and a couple of the other just star players that the Revolution women's team has is just, honestly, they're some of the most popular Ultimate players in the world that people know. So it's just great to see that influence, and I think they're a big reason for that. So it's cool to see.
Back in action, Western Washington with the turn. Carleton picks up far sideline, working out of the vertical stack. Swinging out of reach, but there's a trash pickup from Barstone and Price Lazarus. Jacobus over to Price Lazarus. Right outside the end zone is Sims. Sims will reset. Lots of patience from this Carleton team to find the score. Sims with her second goal of this first half.
Yeah, Naomi there looked like she just willed that disc in the end zone. Great play by her to just essentially find the open receiver time in and time again right there. I mean, that was great play by Naomi. Almost single-handedly scored that point for Carleton.
So Carleton seeming to find their stride with 4 straight.
Yeah, you see that sometimes. I mean, we mentioned sometimes it's hard to, the first few points out of the gate kind of clicked a rhythm. But, team like Carleton, storied program, they've got some veterans on their team. And, looking at Western Washington right now, their heads are down. They look a little dejected here. They've got to figure out a way to get their mental game back in it because, Carleton's essentially been on a 6-1 run now. So the Western Washington offense, it's got to be tired, but they've got to figure out a way to punch one of these in to get their defense back on the field.
And part of pool play, Carleton College is the 11th seed overall in the women's division. Western Washington is the 14th seed. So yes, you're always looking for those upsets in pool play, but holding seed is equally as important as well.
Yeah, and you'd think, right now Carleton and Western Washington so close in seed, you would think that the play would be on a similar level, but from what we've seen the last 7 points of this game, this is a very one-sided match. And Carleton just looks, they're just outclassing Western Washington here.
There was the run through D for Sims. Carleton will pick up. Powell to Price Lazarus. Carleton really using the break side on this near sideline. Looking for the end zone. That's another break.
That was a great pass by Maya to get that around the mark there. It just, one of the things that they just did on that last point that just shows that they've got confidence right now is their dump passes, their swings. They were easily getting those off, hitting their receiver in stride, and Western Washington just did not have an answer for that last point, and they haven't the past, now 8 points. The confidence in a win like this is extremely important, and that can come in waves. Western Washington, you saw they started very quick, but the second that Carleton was able to match them at 2-2, you almost saw a flip switch saying, oof, now the real Carleton is playing, right? And, that can be demoralizing if you're on the team that knows you're a lower seed. You might know that, they've got a deeper talent set than you do. So, when you're in that situation, Western Washington has got to rely on some of their top players to come through here. When you're going down 7-1 run and you're on the losing end of that right now, your top players have got to figure out a way to, whether it's go every other for a couple passes, set up some isolation plays for your top players to get them involved, get their confidence back, and hopefully get them a score.
Priest pulling for Carleton, resetting to Yen. Western Washington with one back in the deep space while the handlers kind of working it. And that's caught.
It was a great snag by Vale.
And just out of the hands of Isla. So Carleton, if they score here, they will take half. Powell looking, and there's a hand block, but Priest is still able to catch it. Up to Price Lazarus. Maybe about 10 yards outside the end zone. Looking for the dump, and pass is no good.
That's where Carleton's been strong, around the dumps, and they had a turn there, which is a little surprising to me. But Western Washington gives it right back. Although, candidly, they haven't been able to work it that well, so if I'm the coach right now, I'm thinking that's not a bad decision to just send it and make Carleton work for it again, and hopefully, hope for a turnover, which Carleton's been very stingy since, after the first 2 points of this game with the disc, and so I don't expect them to give this disc back up too easily here.
So Carleton right knocking on the doorstep of the end zone, but overthrown. Another opportunity for Western Washington. To your point, Kurt, immediately getting rid of it, or even from a field position perspective.
I'm okay with that. If I'm the coach, I'm okay with that, Play the field position game right now. Get your defense, switch the field for Carleton. They've been so effective. Make them do it the whole field, right? Now it's unfortunate. This is, an offensive unit, not their full squad for Western Washington, but it's you got to make them work, make them earn it, make them beat you, and that's what Western Washington is doing.
Price Lazarus finding an open receiver downfield, but no good.
See, on the flip side, I don't like that decision by Price Lazarus, because Carleton has been working it all the way to the end zone line almost with ease. And by taking a half-field shot, Huck, that's almost a wasted opportunity in my opinion. You've got the momentum, you're working it down easily. Western Washington is barely putting pressure on you, and they've shown that they can't work the disc, so I would just work it. See, get another turn.
That shot to the end zone was no good. Another opportunity for Carleton. They have the full 70. Two people there, but Carleton able to catch it. It's another deep look, and great closing speed, but then the continuation throw is incomplete. Mackenzie Corpy, though, coming on to catch that Huck. Really well done.
Yeah, clearly you saw the speed from Mackenzie, and at the beginning of this game, she was actually one of the ones that put so much pressure on the Western Washington dumps that she almost single-handedly caused a few of those turnovers, and you can see why. She's got incredible speed. I mean, she made up 10 yards on her fellow receiver who was already out in front. Just incredible. But you see a little bit of the youth there with a poor throw that should be an automatic score.
Mackenzie Corpy, the 5'7" sophomore from Rybrook, New York. She's a political science major. Carleton College drawing people in from really everywhere. They have several from Seattle, you know, same state as Western Washington.
Yeah, you see a lot of influx from Seattle to Carleton. You see that a lot on the men's side as well. A lot of youth from Seattle have a big connection to Carleton. In fact, some of the great players from, you know, the late 90s, early 2000s, you know, that went to Carleton, Chase Sparling Beckley, Alex Nord. they they they've also actually ended up residing in Seattle for a certain point afterwards. So you kind of see there's a connection there. You know, you see Nick Stewart, who is a Carleton alum, lives in Seattle now. There's quite a few of them.
Disc back live in play, Western Washington, center of the field. Working it with the underyard, strike cut. And incomplete. Carleton, both teams looking to end the point. Carleton especially, so they are able to take half.
Yeah, that would have been a great one for Western Washington. They were working it up the field. Just had an unfortunate drop there. But now this is an opportunity for Western Washington. If you've got the Frisbee here right on the goal line, this has been an extremely long point. End this point with a score. You're still within striking distance, within 3. Maybe you can steal a break on the next point. We've got to figure out, Western Washington's got to figure out a way to get this point in.
So Yen will not tap it in, even though she has before. She was the one in the stack. The disc goes up and incomplete.
I'm surprised Yen didn't pick up that Frisbee. I know she's had a few turns, but she's one of the top throwers on the team. I'm shocked she didn't pick that Frisbee up. Now, if I'm Carleton here, take your time, work it down the field. Great D from Yen.
And keeping it alive, Western Washington moving it up. Nice grab, unguarded, but the throw just a little bit rushed. Not able to get there for the receiver. Another opportunity for Carleton. When the fatigue sets in, it's important to really focus on form and those fundamentals. You can see the Carleton women watching the disc all the way into their hands. Working it up the far sideline, toes it in bounds, still there. A call on the field, pick called.
Yeah, if I'm Carleton here again, work the disc all the way in. You see Western Washington, you got Yen on her leaned over on her knees. She's tired. It's been a long point. You got a few others doing that. Work the disc, make some easy dump passes. Western Washington has not been able to put a lot of pressure on Carleton. Just let's make solid throws and let's take this into half if I'm Carleton.
So the disc will stay in play, but intercepted by Yen. Good heads up defense. She is looking for a receiver downfield.
Yen is racking up the stat sheet, I can tell you that.
And end zone shot. It is incomplete. I think both teams have called a timeout in this point. The heat certainly rising, probably doesn't help, but those are all elements that help contribute to mental toughness, certainly.
You know, we've seen that flick now, Huck, from the far sideline twice now, where the thrower throws an inside-out flick with the wind coming off to that side, off their left shoulder, and just causing the disc to go out of bounds. You know, if you're going to make that Huck, you've got to throw that flat to slightly outside in. Otherwise, that disc is going to, the bottom part of that Frisbee is going to catch the wind, and it's going to take it out of bounds just like it did right there. So, you know, if you're trying to make those Hucks, especially Western Washington going in that direction, got to make that slight adjustment to throw it a little bit outside in and give your receiver a chance.
Priest with the disc. Overhead with time, there's Sims. Foul called. Coming in on 0. No contest. Reset to Priest. Over to Powell. Powell looking for Sims. One-handed grab. She'll reset. Carlton with space. Approaching their red zone. Powell really working the every other on this possession. Barnstone shooting in, not in, still not in. And longest point ever results in a score by Maya Powell. Both kudos to both teams to really toughing out a point that long.
Yeah, those are difficult ones. You know, we did see a long point in the previous men's game with Carleton versus UMass, and generally we said that if you can win those long points, usually you end up winning the game. And you saw there Carleton was able to just stick it out. They were more poised. They made less mistakes, even though it was just one less. But those are the things that can make a difference between a game, winning a game and losing a game. And Carleton was able to show poise there. Actually worked it up the field quite a few times. If they didn't make a couple of those mistakes around the end zone line, Yen had a couple great blocks, making up for some of those early turnovers. But, Carleton's showing some poise here that I think could help them deeper in the tournament by being able to, really walk up the Frisbee pretty confidently. Now, Western Washington hasn't been able to provide or pressure them as much on defense as some of the other top teams might, but nonetheless, it does take some poise to be able to work it all the way up the field.
Definite composure, especially when you're probably fairly tired from being on a point that long. The good news is that both teams get a break because it's halftime, and we will also take a short break, and when we return, we'll have the second half of play, Carleton versus Western Washington. You're watching the USA Ultimate College Championships presented by Fulcrum Media. Welcome back to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We are at halftime in the first day of pool play where Carleton College Syzygy is leading Western Washington Chaos 8-3. Both teams taking to the shade. You can see them underneath those shade tents on the opposite side of our booth. After a pretty long point, but showed a lot of grit from this Carleton squad. I'm Emmy Fitzgerald alongside Kurt Gibson. Kurt, you have played in multiple college championships back in the day, and I wasn't saying it was yesterday or even last year or a couple years before that, but you have played in the college championships before. What kind of energy and excitement is really out here as a participant?
Let me tell you, this is one of the coolest tournaments as a multiple sport. I've had the pleasure of playing the World Championships representing the USA. You know, I've won a club championship, and I got to tell you, you know, maybe it was because it was my first, but you know, participating and being at a college tournament like this, you know, there's just something about the passion. There's something about the camaraderie of the team, your teammates, you know, the friendships and the bonds that you make in school, and it's like none other because you know you spend time, you know, almost every day. I mean, when I was in school, we practiced 6 days a week, really. I mean, there's probably one day where you didn't see your teammates, and you know, whether that was on the track, whether that was at practice, whether it was a tournament, whether it was, you know, Saturday morning after, you know, a long week, or you know, Thursday nights or Sunday night before school the next day. I mean, we lived and breathed Ultimate together while we were in school, and it just is such a cool experience to, you know, essentially lay it all out on the line at this tournament, because this is it, right? This is kind of, you're at the big show, right? It's kind of like getting to the NCAA bracket, you know, for March Madness in college basketball, and this is just such a cool experience that, you know, as a player, you'll really never forget these experiences if you get to the college championships. I mean, you know, pool play, kind of the jockeying for positioning to get to a place in the bracket, especially if you're one of the top teams. You know, when I was in college at University of Florida, we were always in the top 4 seeds, so we were essentially making sure that, hey, your first objective, win the pool, right? Because if you win the pool, you know, you stay out of pre-quarters, right? And so that's one less game that you got to play. And I mentioned in our last broadcast that, you know, the difference between today's game and maybe 15 or so years ago is that a lot of these younger players have come in with disc skills, right? So up and down the roster, you know, maybe not necessarily the athleticism has changed, but the disc skills with some of the bottom of the roster has changed pretty significantly. And so it's made quite a bit of difference in terms of made quite a bit of difference in terms of, you know, the level of play and just, you know, the experience here. It's just incredible.
It really is incredible to see, you know, some of the best of the best of the best this weekend. There are 20 teams in each division, from the men's division and the women's division that we're watching now. More than 1,000 athletes. The defending women's champions are Dartmouth Princess Layout, and they defeated Texas Melee last year in the finals. We saw Jacqueline Verjus over near our broadcast tent in between rounds a little bit ago. She's always certainly extremely fun to watch. The defending men's champions are Carleton who we saw in this previous round. And it is the second time this is held in Milwaukee. It was held here in 2015, and both of the champions from that year are back this year. That year, the men's title went to UNC, and the women's title went to Stanford. And I believe both of those schools have brought both their men's and women's teams. UNC women and men both qualified for nationals, as did Stanford women and men. So it's just really exciting to see these divisions grow, and with the growth of Youth Ultimate, everybody out there, get your middle schoolers with a disc in their hand, get them playing.
Yeah, you know, you've seen some of these programs. I mean, UNC, I know when I first started playing, you know, North Carolina was a powerhouse. They were very, very solid. NC State, but it's Stanford as well, both on the men's and women's side. In fact, Stanford had a streak in the early 2000s where they won, I think it was 3 national championships in a row, and they've just been, you know, rather incredible, incredible program. You know, in fact, yeah, you look at Stanford, they won, their first championship was in 1997. They won 3 years in a row through 1999. They won in 2003, and they won another three-peat from 2005 to 2007. So again in 2016 as well. So Stanford is one of the top programs ever for on the women's side and men's side for that matter.
And we are nearly back into play, both teams trying to stay in the shade for as long as possible after a really long point. If you're just joining us, I'm Emmy Fitzgerald alongside Kurt Gibson as part of the coverage of the college championships happening all weekend here on the USA Ultimate social streams. Ulti World is streaming, and as well as the semifinals and finals will be on ESPNU and in the ESPN app Sunday and Monday. So your Memorial Weekend is really covered with lots of Ultimate.
Hey, Memorial Day has always been the ultimate weekend. If you're an ultimate player and you played in college, then you've never had a chance to go hang out by the beach on Memorial Day weekend, because you are probably flying around the country to Milwaukee, Columbus, Ohio, anywhere, Denver, Colorado, to play at the college championships. But you know what? It's one of the most fun experiences you'll have in your entire college career, and generally your ultimate career as well.
So Carleton starting on offense in the second half, out of the vert stack. Handler movement, kind of struggling to get those upfield cuts, and miscommunication. Western Washington will pick up.
You saw it. That was a kind of a weird high release backhand from Gracie Little right there. I'm not really sure what she was thinking on that throw. Maybe it was a high stall count, but she kind of just flipped it up when she really should have stepped out and thrown the pass right into her chest. But that came out kind of weird.
So that allowed the opportunity for Western Washington to start the second half with a break. Certainly that kind of confidence booster that they, I'm sure, are hoping for. And now within 4, which if they can go on a series of runs, is not an insurmountable deficit at this point.
No, it's not. You know, I've seen multiple games that have come back from 4 down. It's not an easy task, but you know, being down 8-3 at half, that was a freebie essentially. Those are the ones that you want, because you didn't have to work too hard for it, right? Carleton essentially just gave it to you on a poor dump decision. And you know, going back to what I mentioned in the first half to Western Washington, they were essentially playing, you know, punt and play defense. That is a strategy that, you know, I would say Carleton, if you're gonna turn it over at the end zone that you are attacking. Don't turn it over near the close end zone, because especially a team like Western Washington, they haven't proven that they can work it all the way up the field consistently to get scores. So if you're going to turn it, send it the other way, make them go a full 70 yards.
And Western Washington with the pull, making Carleton go about 50 yards downfield. Inside. Seems like Western Washington doing a force middle, kind of calling out how the different home and away forces with each pass. There was a turnover.
That looked like a great hand block by Nariah Bell Sims. That looked pretty clean. And Samia arguing her case here. We'll see what the observer says.
Observer said no foul.
Yep. That was clean. That was a great hand block.
So Carleton will pick back up. And that continuation, you could call it bookends for Sims. Hand block and then the score.
That was a great play. I mean, you don't see hand blocks too often in Ultimate, especially against some of the top throwers, but you saw Samia. What she did was she gave a big windup because she was trying to send the disc to the opposite side of the field, but Nariah just read that perfectly, stuck her hand out, and was able to make a play on that. That was a great tee. And it even goes back to the point of, hey, we want to make sure that, you know, if you're out there, you want to send the disc the opposite direction. Samia tried to do that, but Nariah got the best of her there.
So Carleton will go up 5. They're 9. Western Washington's 4. Game to 15. Wind a little bit gusty. And Samia kind of beating herself up as she was walking back down to their goal line. But we talked about this earlier. Having a short memory is so crucial. It was more of a good play on the part of the defender. Have to onward and upward. So Carleton to pull.
You know, it's unfortunate for Western Washington. They essentially got that freebie from Carleton and they gave it right back. Now they're back down 5 here.
And there's a huck. Sims is tracking that down.
So Samia's clearly got some big throws, but that one didn't work out, but they were able to get the turn right back. Here's where Western Washington has got to be smooth with the disc here. Dump the disc.
And that's a straight shot into the end zone. Cassidy to Jocelyn. And Western Washington with another score in this second half.
Yeah, it was good for them to get back after essentially a one-pass turn. But you know what? To their credit, they threw it down the field and they were able to get an immediate turn, which, you know, we talked about was, you know, early in the first half, you know, they were definitely doing that, but they just couldn't get Carleton to give them the disc back. But they got it back right away and were able to convert.
So Western Washington keeping it within 4. Plenty of time left in the game, but Carleton 6 points away from 15.
Yeah, if I'm Carleton here, if I'm the coach out there, I'm just saying, hey, you know, Western Washington hasn't proven that they can hang with you offensively. And, you know, so let's not make any, you know, quick decisions to send the disc down the field. You know, if it's a high stall count, sure, you want to send it down to the other end zone. But they haven't proven that they can put too much pressure on their dumps to make any of their resets and swing passes difficult. So if you're Carleton, you can do that all day. And the wind seems a little less gusty as it was earlier this morning. So look for Carleton, you know, if they're smart, going to work the disc down the field without making too many deep passes.
And right off the bat, there is a deep pass. Garnering for field position, it seems. And Yen, despite the second attempt, incomplete. So another red zone opportunity for Carleton to get into double digits for the first time today. And they will. Gautier with the score.
Yeah, that was, you know, they did the exact opposite of of what I was, what I had said would be the smart thing to do. But to what we've seen multiple times this game, Western Washington and the opposite team on a huck gave it right back. So essentially, they netted, you know, 30, 40 yards. So it ended up working out. I do think, though, you know, if you're Carleton, right, you know, you're winning this game, you're up 5, you're hoping to coast to a victory here. But if you're going to be competing with some of the top women's teams here, you've got to figure out a way to not necessarily play the huck, turn it over, and hope for another turnover to get shorter field position. You've got to figure out a way now, before you start playing tighter defenses, to be able to work this down the field smoothly without, you know, getting a turnover and then playing D and hoping for a turn.
Maddie Priest with the disc to pull for Carleton. You can see in the background the can sideline chant from Western Washington. In the words of Moulin Rouge, yes, they can. That's what they're trying to channel.
I'm not as familiar with that as you maybe are, Emmy.
It's a great movie, and some contact on the field.
I'm more of a Rent fan, and now The Greatest Showman has been my favorite musical.
Okay.
In fact, I've got a new Halloween costume for next year. I'm going to dress up as Hugh Jackman or
Nice.
Zac Efron.
And Ismael looking for the end zone, but that will sail out of bounds.
You know, on Western Washington, I'm okay with that. They haven't proven that they can work this down the field, so might as well give Carleton a 70-yard field to work with. But if you're Western Washington, I would try to prevent them from sending it back down the field. See if we can get a turnover here on the dump, get a freebie. So
working. Handlers in the end zone.
in order to do that, Western Washington, what you should do is sag off the dumps a little bit, force them to go backwards, limit those upfield passes. There it is. Yep, exactly what Western Washington wanted. They played loose, a little bit loose on the dumps, prevented those upfield passes, made them dink it around, and you get a turn.
Ismael picking up, and there's another score for Western Washington.
Ismael's clearly what we would call the bus driver on the offensive line, and if she played defense as well. Clearly head and shoulders above the rest of the team in terms of throwing ability. That's the player that you want with the disc in their hands on the goal line. So great decision, great pass, and she essentially caused that by throwing that disc almost out of the back of the end zone, forcing Carleton to work with a full field. You know, that's probably one of the things that, you know, if I'm Western Washington right now, you know, if you get the disc, send it down the field and play that loose handler defense that they were just playing against those Carleton handlers. Yes, they moved it. They have shown that they can move it up the field. But what looked a little different on that point was they almost were sagging off some of the handlers and forcing them to kind of just go sideways, right? And, you know, sometimes you get lucky like you just did by them getting a little frustrated. You know, they're thinking, geez, you know, this is not as fun as throwing a normal mark and throwing downfield throws and potentially getting some pucks off. So as a thrower, sometimes you kind of get a little antsy and sometimes make a decision that you rush. And what happened there with Carleton is they threw it right into the ground.
And Western Washington capitalizing on that opportunity, back within 4. Carleton needing to score. Both teams needing to score. That's the point of the game, really. But it's a long tournament, and we already had a marathon point in that first half. Both teams kind of trying to avoid that for the second half.
Yep. I mean, you've played in, you know, the women's division for quite some time. You know, what would you say, you know, you've been down probably, you've been up against teams by 4, you've been down. I mean, what have you seen or what have you experienced in terms of trying to come back from a deficit like this?
I think mental toughness is so crucial. It's so crucial because you can't always take for granted that you'll get turnovers, but on those long points, you have to grind it out, and then you can't get too excited when you get the turnover and you say, okay, great, here's our opportunity. Maintaining that composure, finding the easiest look is oftentimes the best. Here, Carleton, that easiest look happens to be a 40-yard huck downfield. But even if you're hot and tired and you're getting close to the goal line, if you're Western Washington on defense, we've seen there have been plenty of goal line turns. Cannot give up. And there is a call on the field.
Yeah, you see Maddie Gilbert, Kelsey Kilbride is out on guarding the dump. I would make sure that she does not get beat up the line here and that is a great play. That was Riley Tower with the hand block.
And
gonna get,
trying to get there.
Just a little too far.
call on the play. There was some contact, but they're discussing.
That's not going to be a foul. She's going to take that back.
And she did.
She took it back. She knew that the defender got to that space first. So sometimes in the heat of the moment, you think, hey, I should have had that, which 10 was a little frustrated there, but she quickly realized, hey, that the defender had position there.
So Carleton near sideline. Swinging across, trying to use that break side, maintaining patience. And incomplete. Another opportunity for Western Washington.
If I'm Western here, I would say, Samia, send it deep. You got 10 open. You got 10, do it. Yeah, that's fatigue right there. That is fatigue. She's tired.
Not in for Carleton. The next throw is.
You know, we talked about that. Sammy, you got the disc in your hands. She's the best thrower on the team. She can put it a flick and a backhand long. You know, you can't give Carleton that short field because even though in a normal day, that'd probably be a completion to the dump, in this wind, sometimes and with the fatigue, it just comes out a little wonky that you weren't expecting, and you can get that fortunate turns right there. And so, you know, she had Ruby going deep and had yards. They were giving it to her. You know, if I'm the coach, I would say, hey, I give Sammy the green light and just say, hey, if you see anybody remotely open, I would put it as far as you can because, you know, that's really going to be the only shot for Western Washington, in my opinion, to get back in this game.
And on the Carleton side, Karen Earhart had the score. 19-year-old sophomore out of Boone, North Carolina. She is at Carleton, but was also featured as part of our live streams in our YCC coverage at US Open. She, with her sisters on the Warhawks, who won the YCC Girls Championship this past summer. Her sisters were still on the team. She had graduated. She's a sophomore now, but you can see that influence of that youth ultimate and then really affecting and spreading to programs like Carleton. So disc is in the hands of Samia. She'll go underneath.
Yep, you're going to see her get it back. She should go every other, all the way up the field. She's got no dump here, though. They're really putting a lot of pressure on her. Yeah, you can see Sammy. She's a little frustrated right now. You can tell this is a point in the game where, you know, her teammates are getting a little tight. And, you know, she's having to do so much that, you know, especially with the fatigue, she's making some decisions that if she was fresh, she knows she wouldn't be making, but her teammates haven't really done much to help her, especially in that last point. So I think, you know, if I'm the coach here, we play simple, play solid, play smooth ultimate here. I mean, stick to the fundamentals. I mean, again, she was just left without a dump there. That's just inexcusable. You got to have a reset there available. Otherwise, you're going to make some difficult decisions that can result in turnovers.
So working it up the near sideline.
Great catch. That was Eleanor Heberlein. Here we go. So if I'm Ismail right here, I'm looking to put it in the end zone. Go get it back. Give it back to her.
Swings over. Jocelyn upfield to Isla. And there's a score. Macy Shelbert. Her second goal of the game.
Western played some isolation ball right there. I mean, they had a side stack on the far side of the field and nobody was moving. You know, you talk about isolating cutters in space and giving them time to throw. I don't know if Western Washington did that on purpose so much as everybody was so tired that they couldn't get involved. And so that left whoever was in the center of the field just had open space, you know, really difficult to guard, you know, no matter who you are. Especially Mackenzie. Mackenzie just got scored on, just a stellar defender, but you know what? You got that much open space. It's very difficult to guard anybody in that type of space. I mean, that Mackenzie was essentially guarding the whole end zone, and you know, that she was able the throw was able to put it in a position where she couldn't get to it.
So Western Washington really staying within that 4-5 deficit. They have some good scores, but really need to get a couple breaks. Carleton on offense, though, when they have the disc, it is they are difficult to defend in this game.
Yeah, let's see if Carleton comes down. It looks like they're invert stack. You know, sending somebody off the 5. They're just running a very simple offense. They're sending the last cutter in the stack is making the underneath cut, and they're just doing that all the way up and down the field, isolating their cutters.
Dishing right back to the handlers. And
oof.
Foul called. Kind of a double-decker
just
layup
landed
there.
right on her. It's a backbreaker right there.
So disc checked back in. Sideline. Looking for that strike and fill. High release backhand. Good heads up play from Sims. She will continue.
Wow.
And there's Thomas Toth with the score.
That was an interesting dump pass there. That she had a dump that she was open. She just needed to throw it to space, but she ended up just throwing a extremely high release over that the wind caught it at the right time, and Raya was able to come down with that. That was unfortunate for Western. They played tight D for almost the full 10 seconds, and you see something like that, you're down 4, you're thinking, oh, I got a chance at getting the D, and you know, unfortunately, the Carleton made a play.
So Carleton with 12, Western Washington 7. This part of pool play on Friday and part of our ongoing coverage. Next up, Carleton plays Michigan tomorrow. Actually, Carleton plays Michigan later today at 4:30. So both of these teams do get a bye in the next round. Great to get in some shade, get some food. Byes are great and difficult too, though, with your legs. They're good for your kind of brain and probably the health of your skin and all of that, but tough on the legs.
Ultimate tournaments are just hard in general on your body. I mean, I don't think that, you know, our bodies were built to play 3, sometimes 4 games in a day, you know, almost 2 hours running as hard as you are out here, throwing your body around as much as these athletes do. And so, you know, it can be difficult. And so when you get out there and when you are throwing your body around like that and running as hard as you are, and you have to stop for 2 hours on a bye, it can be very difficult to get your body revved back up again for another game just like this. So sometimes it's almost nice to play games back to back so you don't have to cool down and then warm back up again.
So Western Washington working it again, kind of out of that side stack isolation. They get the turnover. Carleton will pick up. Finding Earhart. And she's shooting for the end zone.
Oof. Again, we see that flick. She tried to throw that outside in, but it essentially just turned back over and unable to let it sit out in space for the receiver. It's just a very, very difficult throw. But candidly, I think it's a good decision by Carleton there, because Western has lately just not shown that they can work it. And this is a little more upwind now for Western here.
And timeout called on the field. Important point for Carleton. Everyone kind of getting their legs underneath them. So Kurt, did you know that 2018 marks the 50th anniversary of the sport of ultimate?
Wow. Wow. It's incredible. It's crazy. I did not know that, but it's about that time because, I know it, the early 70s, I know is when they started talking about it. You saw, you saw Ultimate, I think it was in the 80s. They played at halftime at the Rose Bowl
Right.
one time. It's crazy to see how quickly it's evolved, there's been features of Ultimate at now, the halftime of professional football games now. It's pretty incredible how much of the sport has been able to, you know, uh, get visibility and almost exponentially in the last couple of years, right? I mean, you've seen it on SportsCenter multiple times. I mean, you've seen, highlights from, college nationals, uh, you know, college nationals. You've seen, um, you know, just some of the club highlights from the U.S. Open, all of that. I mean, it's just been pretty incredible.
Pretty amazing. Ultimate consistently going into even the ESPNW top 10 highlights. So both on SportsCenter, women on SportsCenter as well. Hospital pass up in the air. Carlton coming down with it.
It's a nice grab by Karen Earhart there. That was great. We saw her on the first, I think it was the first or second point of the game. She dropped that one in the end zone. I think she made up for it right there. It's a great, great catch.
So near sideline, looking for the continuation. Thought we might get a layout D. The disc is caught, but there is a call on the field. The disc will go back to Priest.
You know what, Emmy, you've obviously played, the women's division for quite some time. I mean, just watching Mackenzie play, she is pretty incredible. She's only a sophomore, and she seems to be all over the field. She's very fast. She's got speed. Pretty explosive athlete.
It's
You think she's got runway in the division to become potential Callahan nominee at some point?
I think so. I mean, her athleticism is just really fun to watch. We love getting a front row seat here. You can see Samia in this power position, shooting for the end zone, and
that was a great pass by Samia. Great, great pass. In the wind, it's a little tough to read. I think if you're Yen back there, you got to kind of take the deeper look and come back to it if it drops, because she was essentially retreating that whole time and kind of waiting on that bounce to happen, and it didn't really do it, but she was still trailing on her heels, making such a difficult catch. You got to help yourself out by, running back a few more yards and then maybe coming back onto it if it drops low.
so call on the field. The disc goes back to Carlton. Activating Priest. Instead, looking for that.
There's Karen again,
release.
making up for that early play.
Good hands from Earhart. Nice fake. Looking under. Mackenzie Corpy, just a sophomore. And overhead into the end zone. Ellen Jacobus.
Man, look at Yen on the sideline. She has been playing hard. You can see she's playing with passion. I know she's on the losing end right now, down by, quite a few. One of the top players for her team, but you can just watch her just playing with such passion and just leaving it all on the field. And that's what you want to see at the college championships. Her team's down, but hey, she's leaving it all on the ground, yelling up to her teammates. Really, really cool to see.
So the Carleton Syzygy squad 2 points away from taking this game in pool play. Western Washington, though, every time it really seems that Carleton has a commanding presence, they come back and answer with a couple goals of their own, playing with so much heart, to your point, really not giving up at all.
Yeah. No, it's good to see, and with Carlton, it's just been, in this game, much more stingy with the frisbee. Which, in a windy game like this, you've got to be like that. And for every point that you could say Carlton's up 6 right now, they're getting close to locking this one away. If they can get 2 more points in, for every point that they don't have to play defense or offense on, they can steal a few breaks. That can help later in the tournament. They can try to close this out 15-7, 15-8 instead of maybe 15-10 or 11. That's a big win for Carleton, just playing less points.
And the wind started to gust a little bit more in between this last point. So the pull went to just inside of midfield. Western will take it center field. Ruby Cassidy with the disc. And another side stack we've seen from both teams kind of isolate that cutter in the middle of the field. Shelbert back over to Tower. Tower continuing to Jocelyn.
Emmy, in your opinion, does Carleton have a shot at winning? Does anybody on Carleton have a shot at winning the Callahan this year?
Well, they did announce the Callahan finalists, I believe. And I don't want to miss anyone's name because we will definitely hear about it. But great hand block on the field from Sims, but Western Washington will still get it back.
So if you think about, some of the men's finalists, usually they end up being some of the, obviously a top player on a top team, but usually the best throwers on the team. So usually the best disc skills can put you right at the top as a finalist,
And that's what we've seen so far. The finalists come from British Columbia, Oregon, California, Pitt, and UNC. So we'll see Ella Hansen from Oregon on our live stream later today. And you're right, it's just very commanding disc skills and decision making. I think decision making is so crucial and just a huge separator, especially when a lot of technical skills are required in a game.
Is that what separates those top 5 finalists in your opinion?
I believe so, yes. And turnover, little back and forth on this possession. Carleton checking in. Far sideline.
So Carleton has not changed their offensive strategy at all. Not that they would, because Western Washington has not done much to challenge it. But one of the things that Carleton is doing offensively is essentially sending the back of the stack underneath for an undercut almost every time, and usually either a forced middle mark or sagging the handler into the lanes can help change the flow for an offense that is doing that. But Western Washington hasn't made any adjustments along those lines. They've essentially just let Carleton, swing the disc and make those underneath passes on the force side or even the break side, depending on which side they're on, up and down the field. And, if there we see another inside-out flick that's just going to float out. Western Washington not making the adjustments on those flick hucks to the north side of the field. But, if you're Western Washington, if you're the coach, you got to think, hey, I've got to change something up defensively to slow these guys down, because they've just been able to essentially get unders at will almost the entire day.
We just saw here Sims right on the goal line. She resets to Powell. Give and go. And kind of a leading backhand.
It's a nifty throw by Maya Powell there that I think she was relieved that that one was completed. But you know what, when you're up by as much as Carleton is, you can take a few risks to kind of sneak them out.
So good eye contact, you can see, and that communication. Saw a little bit from Powell's facial expression. Oh, I hope you get it. And
yeah. We saw that in the men's.
Isabel Olsen.
We saw that in the men's game. Brett Grammond did that from UMass, but ended up being a turnover. The lefty backhand, if you're for a righty thrower, can be a great weapon, or it can get you in a little bit of trouble if you use it too much, or your receiver's not ready for it. But in the previous game against the Carleton men's team, UMass they rushed it, but here, although it was a decision that seemed a little shaky, Carleton was able to come down with it.
So Carleton has 14 going to a 7-point lead. And Western Washington will start the point on offense. However, if Carleton is able to convert with the break, they will take the game. Hopefully, Western Washington has an offensive answer.
Yeah, look for Western to get it to Samia. You can see she's a little frustrated. They didn't have anybody catching the pull.
Continuing.
There's Samia. Look, nobody's cutting downfield. We've got to. It's a great flick. Great flick. Look for her to send it here. Yep.
Looking for the end zone. It's floating.
Oh.
And thought that second attempt would be good from Kelsey Kilbride.
You knew that was coming from Samia. She's got great throws, and when you come up the line like that, getting the frisbee, it's hard not to throw a huck pass like that. And she had the momentum. Her team's down. She's looking to make a play, and though I have to say that was fundamentally, Kelsey Kilbride, she was wide open, went after that with one hand. I mean, these are fundamentals that you teach, to young players, and, despite how many years you're playing, you got to go after that with two hands. It was a one-handed catch, and that should have been a goal.
So now Carleton knocking down the door. If they complete, and two receivers, but incomplete. So Western Washington will have another opportunity. Samia Ismail.
You saw Eleanor just almost completely knock over the girl that was in front of her.
So far sideline.
You see Western Washington, they're running hard here on this point. It's great to see them doing that. They're hanging out a little deep, though, allowing for poachers. You've got Alana Hall sitting out here deep. She's on the far side of the field, but Naomi Price-Lazarus, she's a smart defender. She's just hanging out in the center of the field. So it's limiting any huck opportunities for Western Washington, any smart huck opportunities for Western Washington.
And handler reset. Pointing for the break side. They're working. And continuing about 10 yards outside the goal line. Carleton shooting for the end zone. That's a score. Ellen Jacobus, the senior.
I think I have to call out Mackenzie again on that point because, she's only a sophomore. Clearly doesn't have the disc skills that some of the veterans on the team have. But throughout this entire game, she played outstanding defense, made plays, hustle plays, and then even on that last point, you saw her catch under, swing passes, and didn't throw upfield too much, but was making easy dump passes, all completions. Essentially a turnover-free game for her, and great defense. You know, for me, she's probably the MVP of this game. You know, played outstanding. And so I think if for the young ladies out there that are watching, you know, she's clearly got athleticism. You know, a lot of athletes that join this game but fail to necessarily take it to the next level, and it's primarily because of the throwing ability and, of course, the decision making. Like you mentioned, you know, when we talk Callahan nominees on the women's side, is, you know, decision making is such a big piece, and then throwing ability. You know, Mackenzie recognizes, hey, not one of the best throwers out here yet, but I'm going to play within myself. I'm not going to turn it over, and I'm going to, you know, help and support my other teammates by, you know, continuing to move the disc, turnover free.
So Carleton will take this game 15 to Western Washington 7. We have more Ultimate on the live stream, so stay tuned to USA Ultimate's Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube pages. Go ahead and subscribe. Even on Facebook, I believe you can sign up for alerts to know when Facebook is live, when we're live with our next game. But for now, for Kurt Gibson, I'm Emmy Fitzgerald. You're watching the USA Ultimate College Championships, presented by Fulcrum Media.